Greetings, bloggers, vloggers, followers, and potters. Dustin here from Dustin's Dynasty with another edition of this week's vlog. Yeah, been following me. I've been doing this autism thing for over 2.5 decades now, probably more. And I've been living on my own for 7 years, and I've had a part-time job for over 15 now. So we've been living life as an autistic person who is in his 40s, living the dream and being the person who is really embodied the autism. So, and that is pretty much what we're going to talk about today, is embodying it, because sometimes we feel that being autistic, we for me anyway, is I want to feel that, like, I don't need help sometimes, or I don't want to admit that I need help with things, or that things are there in place for me, or they're there for that reason of needing help. I want to try to often um fight for things on my own. I don't want to blatantly come out about being autistic, or that anxiety or whatever, what have you, brings a challenge forth. And in these past few weeks, without knowing, facing a challenge, that things in regard to the daily routine, but not knowing that I fall under the Americans with Disabilities Act. Oh, I missed celebrating the anniversary of the Americans with Disabilities Act. I did not know that these things were there for me, even though I was willing and probably necessary to fight the fight, even though I didn't feel I had a basis for the conversation of needing to fight the fight that I needed to fight. And thankfully everything worked out without me having to go there. But it's hard sometimes to admit when something else is being proposed to you, and because you're being led to believe something that is not in fact true, or may not work for you, but you think, but in my mind, I think it has to work because that's what I'm being told. It's what I have to do. And this is, if you want to stay with this thing, this is how it has to be. But sometimes it takes others to fight for you. And for me, in this situation that I was experiencing the last few weeks, it took my mother to say, "You need to fight this." And I didn't even have to fight it. Well, I didn't have to fight it. I had that grounding with me, and even though it was fixed all along without even knowing, sometimes we have to admit that autism does hold us back from the things that that the world is expecting us to do. And I think there has always been, with me anyway, a part that has had a shame about, needing help, needing extra help, needing accommodations, needing things like that, because of I can't do things the way that everybody else does. And I was always under the presumption or the belief that I was lazy or whatever, because I needed extra help, and or maybe something under the ADA, or maybe a workplace accommodation, something like that. And it's sometimes hard when you are believed to fall in line, with the rest of the world, with the rest of what society tells us to do, with what everybody else has. And sometimes we don't realize things, that we need to take advantage of the things that the accommodations that have been given to us. Like, for instance, at work, maybe taking a little extra break, because we are allowed to do that, and because we need to, maybe regroup ourselves after doing a tedious task that, while may not be seem tedious to others, would be tedious to me. Those sort of things. Maybe needing a little extra help with something. And I think one of the biggest things I think about that is having those conversations, being open about what I really need, and not being afraid to admit that I need help, being afraid to not being afraid to say, I'm struggling with this or that or the other thing. And, maybe I need to have that conversation. Sometimes, I think I look at it personally, as having a sign of weakness, being weak or, not being inadequate. A lot of self-shame that really doesn't need to be there. About myself and a feeling that because, it's the autism or the anxiety or whatever it is that, it just makes you feel bad about yourself. But I think it's equally as important when you do delve in to find out the things, to advocate for the things that you need and that you want and that you desire. Um, those things matter. They are important, and if they are, if you do fall under those things, like we think about, autism is a disability, and I know there's a lot of camps that don't want to believe that, but autism comes different in everybody. Even though, I can be perceived as somebody who is just walking down the street as a normal person. If you would look closer into me, you would see that I may need extra accommodations, or I may have challenges, or whatever that may be. That may have its own, feeling and perception, and that you can see that I need help with some things. And sometimes, it's just me just thinking I can do things like everybody else. And when I think that I can do everything like everybody else, sometimes they don't happen in the right way. And when they don't happen in the right way, it's just harder to recoup from that. And then it's like, well, why didn't you ask for help in the first place? Because if you did ask for help, we would help you. And I think sometimes there's a lot of shame in asking for help. I'm one who is I can be open with the people who I personally feel I can be open with, but I think, asking for help is equally as difficult, as it can be, how it is and how, the world is expecting of us. Um, they expect us to fall in line, and sometimes, some things are not written clearly for us, or explained clearly for us, and there is, I have this internalized sense of shame of, needing to ask for help or ask for things or ask to be a part of something, because part of it is also this fear of being rejected for something, and I think that can also transpire, in the field of being a friend with someone. There's this fear, if you don't push yourself to be open with this person, or just be honest with what you want to say or what you want to do, I have this constant internalized fear that I'm going to be rejected for what I'm saying or what I'm doing, or that what I'm feeling is a little out of line because I'm not thinking properly, I'm not thinking clearly, those sort of things. And it's hard. It's definitely hard every day. That's what makes autism so what it is. It's overthinking every single decision that you make for fear that you're going to be rejected, caught you know, costed, anything like that. You feel like you're always under a microscope when you're autistic, and you have to navigate the world outside of you because you feel like you can't be yourself. You feel like you're constantly being watched as that person, or the person who struggles, or the person that's different. And even if not being the person that struggles or being the person that's different, just being a person in a standard place where other people mingle, or other people habitate, or other people, work, or whatever, that makes, it makes it harder. And then and then we have to work as autistic people just as harder to get the same things done that maybe somebody else does. And sometimes we have to be willing to open ourselves up and ask questions that, maybe are uncomfortable or hard for us. Maybe when we're communicating with someone, maybe taking that step. And I think sometimes it is hard, as an autistic person, and especially myself who deals with anxiety a lot, taking that step of outside that comfort zone and maybe asking that question or taking that conversation to the next step. What's that fear? That fear of rejection is always there. That fear of, not belonging or being a part of something. I think it's always there. It's what it is. I'm starting to be better at it. I'm starting to hopefully get more friends as time goes on. I'm starting to hopefully, be more honest about my struggles in the world, self-advocating, those sort of things. They're coming together piece by piece because I am learning more about myself and learning how to communicate with others in a proper way instead of, maybe reacting in a way that's not appropriate or, being not, having a meltdown or something like that, that's not appropriate. It's starting to be in those pieces, and it can be, and it's hard. But I think one of the biggest things I think I had to admit in the last 2 weeks is that I do struggle. And yes, autism is a disability, and it doesn't make me different, but it's a different kind of ability. We have to admit that. But we all struggle in our own way, and there are no two autistic people who are ever the same. But for me, I have to admit that just because I can communicate and articulate with you, that I may need help in my own way just as much as any other autistic person may need help in their own way. And there is no shame in that. There is no fear and no sense of, well, if you're told no, then you fight it to the next level. You take it to where you need to be and you do what you need to do. And I'm starting to learn more about that. So I wanted to get on here. I didn't want I had a busy weekend and I just wanted to pop on, shoot a few words. If you haven't already, be sure to like and subscribe to this video. If you haven't already, also be sure to follow on Facebook, Instagram, X, and Pinterest. That handle is Dustin's Dynasty. I'm on the web. That address is www.dustinsdynastyusa.com. Lastly, I have a link tree with all my links to all my things, my email sign up, my website, my socials, and my podcast. That handle is Dustin's Dynasty under Linktree. Again, I want to thank you for listening. Take care of yourself. Let's have a good rest of the weekend and stay safe out there. We'll talk to you soon. Bye for now.